as we wrap up this week, I want to talk about just real quickly a couple things in the giving and receiving of feedback. We looked at ask for and receive feedback from God and from others yesterday. Today I want to talk about giving and receiving feedback. Giving and receiving feedback. We something I heard years ago. In fact, my wife says it often. Unsolicited advice is taken as criticism. Unsolicited. In other words, when you give feedback to someone who doesn't want it, it feels like criticism. So that means we have to be incredibly gentle, because gentleness is a part of what we do in order that someone can receive what might be perceived as criticism or correction or rebuke. Now, those are all words and descriptions the Bible uses about our giving and receiving feedback from others. Is to receive reproof, receive correction, to give reproof. And so he's saying when there's something wrong, we don't do the body, the corporate body, any good by sticking our head in the sand or pretending it's not there. It's interesting because Gallup, the Gallup people, the pollsters, they've done tons of research. I've got a little bit of information I want to read to you. The Gallup organization calls for fast and focused feedback. Gallup data shows that when someone strongly agree, that employees strongly agree that they can receive meaningful feedback over the past week's work, they are more than 4 times likely to be engaged in their work. That's pretty powerful. So they're saying that when employees receive meaningful feedback within a week of something they've done, they're 4 times more likely to be engaged in their work. And engagement is usually defined as focused on their work, attentive to their work, and even willing to go beyond their normal job description. That's kind of a definition Gallup gave years ago in a book called Q12 about employee engagement. And so the pollsters, polling thousands of workers, say employees want feedback. But the operative word is meaningful feedback. Meaningful feedback. And so what that tells us, and most of us are like this, when we receive feedback that's not very meaningful or was given in a critical way, punitive way, it's hard to receive. It really takes a lot to be gentle in receiving that. What we can control, though, mostly is whenever we give feedback, to make sure we do it with gentleness. I love a passage in Galatians. Remember Galatians 5 is all about walking in the Spirit and having the fruit of the Spirit and dying to the deeds of the flesh. And wonderful chapter. Chapter 6 kind of goes into some practical stuff. In chapter 6, verse 1, he says, if someone is caught in a sin, brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, listen to this, you who are spiritual, or you who walk in the Spirit, should restore him gently. There's our word, Praotes, gently. But watch yourself, or you also may be tempted, or you also may be vulnerable. I love that. It has a lot about giving feedback to someone. If someone is caught in a sin, someone is really screwing up. Not just doing something that was unprofitable, but sinning. They've crossed a line. They've missed a moral mark, and they're unaware that they've even done it. You who are walking in the Spirit, that should be all of us. We should be, when I'm under the influence of Jesus, I'm walking in the Spirit. That's what he's saying. He could have said, you could translate that, you who are under the influence of the Spirit, restore him gently. Isn't that lovely? Restore him. It didn't say punish him severely, criticize him harshly. Restore gently. I love that, because the person that has a humble and gentle spirit, the person who's walking under the influence of Jesus, knows that the giving and receiving of feedback isn't just, let somebody have it and go on. That's not the goal. That's not love. just dump your bucket on somebody about what they've done wrong and then disconnect. It's a restoration process. It has the idea of time involved. It has the idea of nurture and care. In verse 2, the very next verse says, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. What's the law of Christ? Do you remember what the law of Christ is? Jesus said, a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. John chapter 13, verse 34. That's the new command. Love one another. And so he's saying when you're carrying each other's burdens, that's the restoration process. When you help someone be restored gently, you're willing to kind of shoulder up with them and help carry some of the burden of getting out of that marital affair, getting out of that drug addiction, getting out of that entrapment of gossip, getting out of that embezzlement, getting out of that deceptive practices. When you see someone in sin and you're giving them feedback, wow, this is just not right. How can I walk with you to move out of this place that is tearing you apart? That's incredible giving of feedback. And I think the warning is there, watch yourself or you also may be tempted, is really a willingness to say, Spirit, be showing me where I'm vulnerable, and let that vulnerability that I become deeply aware of augment my own humility and gentleness as I give feedback to others. So we've been talking about all these things. I want to just leave you with one last thing. The last thing we talked about was receiving feedback that's harsh or difficult. This too is what Jesus did. He modeled for us receiving caustic remarks and treatment from others. And here's what gentleness is and humility does: without retaliation. Without retaliation. It's in 1 Peter where Peter says that they hurled their insults at him and he did not retaliate. Part of the really gentle person, really humble person, which we all want to be, we want to move in that direction, is the person that can receive pretty significant stuff, and we can sort out what is true and what is not, but we don't get nasty in return. We don't retaliate. We don't become defensive. We don't take revenge. Lord Jesus, Lord, today the content clearly, Lord, is high enough of a bar to recognize that some of us are just not there yet. But Lord Jesus, empower us to recognize that the more time we spend with you, the closer we'll get. The more we know you and are living dependently on you, the closer we'll become. More like you. Able to receive feedback from others, able to give feedback with gentleness, able to help restore others to their God-given purpose. Lord Jesus, we love you, and we just ask that you do all this in our body, that help us leaders all the way down to every servant, to every attender, Lord, to begin to experience more of you so we can love well. I look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great weekend, and God bless.